Well, I think that DOD, like most major corporations, realized it had to change its model a little bit to keep up. There's no way to really take advantage of the technology unless you're going to change your model, how you deliver that technology at the same pace. And I think what DoD has done a good job of is taking a look at the way they've been organizationally structured for years and turning that a little bit to become much more efficient and take use of the technologies they've been acquiring. I think DoD has really set an example for a lot of the rest of government, and it's really set up to be much more of a delivery service, whether you look at DISA as but one example, but also you look at the actions they've taken relative to joint basing, where you now have Army, Air Force, potentially Navy in the same geographic compound, and being able to deliver services from the communications organizations back out to this variety of user bases. So they really have harnessed the concepts as well as the technology, and I think are probably leading the way for the rest of government. You know, the interesting piece is that application development in the past has really been done by various organizations and much more on isolated islands. Applications have been developed here or here, and there really hasn't been a collaborative sharing environment. The use of cloud technology or infrastructure as a service really helps evolve that process, allows us to do a lot more real-time collaboration while at the same time learning from our experiences of how we test that code and get that code to a production use. I think the more we can compress those time frames, the greater return on investment the Department of Defense will see, the greater sharing across the various service branches. We'll also understand potential, gotchas or hiccups we're going to see along the way through this process that heretofore we really haven't been able to understand until such time as we got near the very end. And of course, that's when we start to see delays in projects, et cetera. So it really has the ability to transform the way they do their application development. And I think it's going to lead to a very exciting time frame within DoD. And that combined with the budget constraints they've had, I think that's one of the areas that they'll be able to exploit the quickest from a dollar savings perspective. It's a really, we've come through a kind of a back to the future type. We realize that a lot of our threats still are coming from the inside. And whether you take a look at the example of WikiLeaks, or you look at the examples of various people sending information they don't realize is necessarily they're compromising anything. I think that one of the great examples that we see as they have to deal with the constraints of whether it's NIPRNet or SIPRNet is we use the Navy. NETSI as an example, the Navy Education Training Center. And what they're looking to do is transform their organization. They have 68 discrete locations where they do training and some 2,800 classrooms. And they're transforming that now as to offer virtual desktop as a service back out to our sailors who go through that process. Instead of physical systems now, they're able to provision virtual desktops in a matter of minutes. All that information is centrally located. There are no more hard drives on people's desks where something could be inadvertently taken off the machine. There's not the ability, we can set the parameters so they can't necessarily forward information to anyone. So it allows us to offer it as a service. We transform the way we train our folks, and at the same time we keep it in a much more secure type infrastructure. Because that infrastructure can be managed by fewer people in one or two particular locations, we can also put in place the rigors or the tactics, techniques, procedures to ensure that we don't have a data leakage, whether it's inadvertent or potentially someone looking to do something they shouldn't be doing. I think the software-defined data center and the concepts behind the software-defined data center are going to impact the commercial enterprise, banking, finance, transportation, and have the same ability to impact the Department of Defense, and maybe even in a greater perspective. I think what we've learned over the last couple years, and I like the example of the automatic pilot within a plane. The plane has all the technologies, has all the bells and whistles. It also has the ability to program to ensure it flies the safest and most direct route. The software-defined data center is really a similar concept. We have all the bells and whistles. Many times the problems that we encounter inside of an operation are self-inflicted. They're human intervention. We think we know better than maybe what we should, and therefore we make a programming error. We inadvertently hit a keystroke we shouldn't hit. and we disrupt communications. The software-defined data center purely says that we have all these technologies within the data center. They all have the ability to communicate now with each other. If we can set those parameters, how they should operate, how efficiently they should operate, when should we be alerting people that we've reached our net capacity load on storage, or maybe a server is overloaded, or maybe a network port is getting too much traffic coming through it. The systems can automatically now start to say, well, I need to reroute the information from that storage system to another. I need to move the workload from one virtual machine to another. And I also need to be able to move the data from one network port to another network port. All this can be done instantaneously, all can be done on the fly. And the beautiful part is afterwards, we have the ability to go back and look at what happened, understand what were those triggers that changed that process, and then reprogram our systems to be much more efficient going forth. And we can do it all with a lot less people, a lot less intervention, and we can manage those systems from farther distances than we've ever had to manage them before. That's going to lead to a lot of efficiencies. That's going to allow better best practices to be implemented across DOD, no different than they be implemented in the financial sector, transportation, healthcare, et cetera. No, it doesn't, and that's the beautiful part. I think you're already seeing great examples under General Hawkins' leadership at DISA, whether you look at what General Basil has done within the Air Force, what certainly the Army is doing, not just at a G6 level, but at a MACOM level as well. We are seeing that transformation take place, and you're seeing young, energetic officers and enlisted people in all those organizations sitting back, understanding from industry what's happening, and understanding what steps they can take along the way to make this transformation. That's not to say that we're not going to encounter bumps along the way, but I think what we're seeing today, different than we've seen in previous years, is we're seeing those organizations reach out to industry, understand what industry has to offer, marrying that against the assets that they already have inside the organizations, and knowing what steps they can take along the way of this transformation. You know, if we go back to the NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act in 2012, it really directed the DOD to start looking at some of these and start understanding how they could utilize this technology. What I can tell you in my position, over the course of the last 2 years, even with the budget constraints they've had, they've really made leaps and bounds from where they were, and I think that we're going to see that continue over the course of the next couple of years.